Hey guys, tonight we take a cobbled stroll back through the foggy alleys of Elizabethan London. It smells like fish and wet wool, someone's playing a lute badly in the distance, and your shoes, well, they're not waterproof. You're headed toward the theater district, though district might be too glamorous a word. It's more like a loose cluster of taverns, ratty stages, and people who yell for a living. The fog rolls low and the crowd's thicker. You pass a man shouting about turnips, another trying to sell teeth, hopefully not his own. And then there it is, the Globe Theatre, rising out of the mud like some glorious, splintery ship. Inside, it's chaos. The audience is already throwing things. You smell beer, hear a donkey bray, no donkey in the play though, and you duck as someone launches a cabbage over your head. Welcome to Elizabethan theater. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere unusual, drop your location and the local time in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's dozing off from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge behind a young actor named Tom, whose boots squelch with every step. He's no leading man, more like third tree on the left, but he's proud of it. He ducks into a back alley behind the Globe and rummages around in a worn leather pouch. Out comes a potato. He slides it into his doublet pocket like it's contraband, gives it a gentle pat, and nods to himself. Strange? Maybe, but you'll come to see it makes a weird kind of sense. You follow Tom through his day. It's cold, wet. His costume is a scratchy hand-me-down and smells like pickled eels. He's one of dozens of jobbing actors trying to make it, juggling 5 roles, dodging debtor's prison, and praying no one in the front row vomits. And through it all, there's always a potato. Sometimes 2. Always in the pocket. This is not a fringe occurrence. You start noticing it everywhere. In dressing rooms, behind the stage, on the streets outside the curtain and the rows. These actors, many barely paid, often sick, constantly in motion, cling to potatoes like lucky coins. And it's not just the actors. You spot them in the hands of costumers, directors, even a cranky playwright muttering something about rhyming love and dove. Why? Why potatoes? To answer that, you need to remember where you are. It's 1592 and London is equal parts genius and sewage. The Thames is basically soup. The air is full of smoke and someone's always yelling about witches. Potatoes, new to Europe thanks to the Columbian Exchange, are the edible equivalent of mystery meat. Some call them poison. Others swear they're magic. They're exotic, strange, and suspicious. But here's the twist. Actors seem to love them. They're cheap, portable, and most importantly, not easily stolen. If you're Tom, walking through Bankside with your only meal of the day tucked into your sleeve, you're going to pick something less obvious than a pie and more durable than an apple. A potato fits the bill perfectly. Historians still argue whether these pocket potatoes were truly used as food, charm, or maybe just habit. Some claim it was a low-key rebellion against dietary rules from Puritan authorities. Others say actors just liked having something to hold on to backstage. One thing's certain, nobody's carrying parsley. You continue watching Tom rehearse. He does his lines, swaps out his socks behind a prop barrel, and every now and then checks his pocket, tapping the potato like it's a pocket watch. There's something calming about it. It's warm from body heat. It doesn't complain. It's not going to boo you. Someone nearby sneezes violently, and a woman starts yelling about bad humors in the air. The potato gets held a little tighter. As evening sets in, the crowd filters in. Most stand in the pit. No seats, just mud. They heckle before the play even starts. A man's beard catches fire from a torch. Someone laughs. This is normal. The play begins. Tom does well. He doesn't forget his lines, nobody hits him with anything sharp, and when he exits stage left, he pulls out the potato and gives it a grateful kiss. You can't tell if he's joking. Backstage, you meet Ellie, a costume assistant who's been sewing for 14 hours and has 3 potatoes tucked in her apron. "One's for dinner," she says. "One's for trade. And that one's for luck." She winks. By now you're starting to realize this is more than just a curious habit. The humble potato is becoming a sort of Swiss Army root, nourishment, talisman, friend. In a world full of bodily fluids, ghost stories, and random violence, it makes sense that something as solid and silent as a potato becomes comforting. You can almost picture the early stages, an actor too poor for gloves pockets, a boiled spud to keep warm. Someone else copies them. Soon it's tradition. A nearby stagehand drops a wooden beam on his foot and curses loudly in Dutch. He too has a potato in his pocket. Maybe it helps. You can't be sure. Still, the question lingers. Is this just about warmth and food, or is there more? After all, you haven't even seen anyone eat a potato yet. They're carried, held, whispered to even, but never consumed. That comes later. For now, you walk the muddy road back to the tavern where actors gather after shows. Tom trades his day's payment, a single silver coin, for a room with a shared chamber pot and 2 moldy crusts of bread. He sleeps with his doublet still on, one hand on the potato, tucked right over his heart. And when the rats come out, because of course there are rats, he mutters something under his breath and squeezes the spud tighter, like it's a rabbit's foot. Maybe it works. The rats stay under the floorboards. For now. The next morning, you're awake before Tom. That's not difficult. He's still tangled in a thin blanket, snoring beside a wooden stool that may or may not be supporting a bucket full of last night's regrets. You watch as sunlight pushes weakly through the warped window slats. His fingers twitch, and then, almost instinctively, his hand goes to his chest. He pats the pocket. Yep. Potatoes still there. You can practically see the relief on his face. He stretches, groans, and groggily begins another day in the life of an Elizabethan actor. Forget velvet cloaks and poetic monologues. Today, like most, will be more about begging for coin, fighting off rats, and trying not to trip over stage furniture. Because while the public sees the magic of O Romeo, the actors living behind the curtain are just barely scraping by. You follow Tom to the theater, where he and the other performers gather for a rehearsal. This is not a glamorous guild of professional dramatists. It's more like a ragtag group of hustlers, second sons, and runaways. They rehearse in the open air, sometimes while dodging horse manure and ducking drunk apprentices who think yelling during your soliloquy is peak entertainment. One man has 3 potatoes in a sack slung over his shoulder. He's trying to sell 2 of them to fund a pint of weak ale. You meet Mary, who plays both a noblewoman and a ghost in today's performance. She's about 17, owns exactly 1 dress, and has hidden a potato in her corset. Keeps me steady, she says, smiling. Also makes a good weapon if someone gets fresh. She pulls it halfway out like a sheriff might flash a badge. Respect. Historians still argue whether actors of this era were truly lowlifes or just deeply misunderstood. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. Some were out-of-work university graduates. Others were barely literate and got the gig because they could juggle or scream convincingly. Either way, none of them were rich, and few had more than the clothes on their backs, unless, of course, you counted potatoes. And you should. Because for these actors, potatoes became a kind of stabilizing force in a world with very few certainties. They were something you could count on, unlike the weather, the crowds, or your fellow performers remembering their lines. During the rehearsal, a scuffle breaks out between two men over a borrowed sword prop. One of them, a wiry fellow named Kit, pulls a potato from his sleeve and threatens to smite the other with it. He isn't kidding. The room freezes. No one laughs. There's a strange respect in the air, like the potato has the power to escalate this from a squabble to something much, much worse. Later, at the tavern across from the globe, a debate sparks between actors about whether potatoes can absorb bad spirits. Some claim they pull illness from the body. Others insist that potatoes left near your bed will turn black if you're being haunted. One man, with wild eyes and too many missing teeth to count, swears he once buried a potato in the corner of the stage and performed Macbeth without a single person dying. That's a win, he says solemnly. You start to get it now. These weren't trained professionals so much as survival artists, people who could quote Virgil and then wrestle a pig in the same hour. And the humble potato was right there with them through every monologue, pratfall, and poorly timed cannon blast. One afternoon, Tom and his troupe perform a history play in the open courtyard of an inn. The audience is half-bored merchants, half-bored drunks, and one goat. You watch as Tom delivers his lines while subtly palming the potato in his pocket. Maybe it's to calm his nerves. Maybe it's just tradition. Either way, it works, until a child in the front row hurls a tomato at his shin. He doesn't miss a beat. He scoops it up, bows, and flings it back with such flair the crowd erupts in cheers. Later, he tells you he practiced that move in the mirror. Potato kept me balanced, he says, dead serious. The fringe truth is this. Elizabethan actors carried everything on them. Literal baggage, letters, coins, pieces of costume, and of course, snacks. They had to. Theaters didn't offer dressing rooms or secure lockers. If you needed it, you carried it. And if you carried it, you might as well choose something versatile, something edible, throwable, maybe even mystical. There's a phrase you hear tossed around, pocketed providence. It's what some actors call their potato habit. It's whispered like a charm, half joke, half jinx. You start to think maybe the potato was more than just a good luck object or a meal in waiting. It was a physical stand-in for hope, a talisman against chaos, a reminder that you could at least control one thing in a world where plague, fire, and bad reviews could destroy your life overnight. As the day winds down, Tom and Mary count their share of the takings, a few pence, a loaf of bread with one bite missing, and 2 more potatoes. Mary beams. "We eat tonight," she declares, and everyone cheers like they just landed a royal contract. You ask her what they'll do if the potatoes are stolen or go bad. She shrugs. "We get more." You look around. On tables, windowsills, even propped on the edge of a wooden stage, potatoes. Big ones, small ones, lumpy, knobby, some starting to sprout. None of them are just food. Not really. Each one tells a little story of survival. By twilight, you see Tom crouching in the dirt behind the tavern. He digs a shallow hole and buries one of his potatoes carefully. Not to grow, not to hide, but to thank the theater gods, he says. You don't laugh. You nod. Because by now you understand that in this muddy, musical, magnificently absurd world of Elizabethan drama, sometimes the only thing more reliable than a wooden stage or an unreliable understudy is the quiet dignity of a potato in your pocket. You wake the next morning to the rhythmic thunk of boots on cobblestone and the faint, unmistakable smell of someone roasting something questionably edible nearby. Tom's already gone, off to run errands for a grumpy prop master with a toothache and a suspicious limp. You head toward the bustle of Cheapside Market, where the stalls are bursting with noise, color, and people who all seem slightly angry. The potato stand is modest, more of a cart, really, manned by a wiry man in a grimy jerkin, who looks like he's one bad trade away from biting someone. His potatoes are misshapen, muddy, and oddly revered. They're not native, Not to this island, and not to most of Europe. Only introduced to England in the past few decades, they're still something of a novelty. You notice how people react to the cart. Some hurry past with narrowed eyes, clutching rosaries or crossing themselves under their cloaks. Others hover nearby like they're considering whether buying one might make them burst into flames or, possibly, get a promotion. Because here's the thing. Potatoes in Elizabethan England are deeply suspicious. Historians still argue whether the common people even knew what they were, or if the tubers were strictly the territory of apothecaries and culinary daredevils. Some say they were called earth apples, others referred to them simply as Spanish roots. Either way, people didn't know whether to eat them, plant them, or nail them to the door to keep witches out. You pass a woman loudly proclaiming that potatoes cause leprosy. She might be right, might be wrong. This is an era where doctors think bleeding you with a knife cures colds. Others whisper that potatoes help you conceive children, and a few say they're aphrodisiacs, which feels both hopeful and deeply unfortunate. Meanwhile, actors like Tom are caught in the middle. They're constantly surrounded by new ideas, playwrights, alchemists, philosophers, and travelers. They pick up strange beliefs and even stranger habits. So, when the idea arises that potatoes might protect you from disease or keep you strong through a winter play season, it spreads fast. You see it unfold in real time. A young actor buys a potato, holds it up like a holy relic, and tucks it into his belt with almost reverent care. A woman selling roasted chestnuts mutters, "He's doomed now." Another spits 3 times and walks in a circle. It's easy to forget how dangerously exotic new food could be. This wasn't just try a new side dish time. This was, you might anger God by eating the wrong root time. You recall how tomatoes were once thought poisonous and coffee nearly banned. Potatoes? Well, they grow underground, like something from the devil's pantry. They have eyes. They sprout unpredictably. They don't seem to fit into the divine order of things. There's even a bishop who once declared that eating potatoes was inviting sin through the mouth. Not very scientific, but it caught on. Religious paranoia aside, there's also basic unfamiliarity. Many people simply don't know how to cook potatoes properly. Raw, they taste bitter. Boiled wrong, they're mushy and weird. A rotten one smells like something crawled into your soul and died there. Still, for actors, the potato has potential. It's compact, doesn't spoil fast, and you don't need to guard it like meat or cheese. In a world where meals are rare and pockets are your pantry, the spud wins by sheer practicality. And maybe that's enough. But as you weave back through the market with a few actors in tow, you overhear a whispered conversation between 2 street preachers arguing about the true purpose of the potato. One believes it wards off the plague if kept close to the skin. The other thinks it absorbs night demons from the air as you sleep. Neither agrees on much except that you should never, under any circumstances, plant one in your garden. That's just asking for your crops to fail. Back at the Globe, Tom shows you something odd. He pulls a shriveled, soft potato from his pocket, clearly months old, and drops it into the fire pit behind the theater. "It did its job," he says simply. Then he pulls out a fresh one from his cloak's inner pocket. "This one's for luck tonight." You can't help but laugh. "You're serious?" He shrugs. "You've seen the crowd. I need all the help I can get." You spend the afternoon shadowing him and the troupe as they rehearse a play by Christopher Marlowe. There's swordplay, monologues, and one actor who keeps forgetting whether he's supposed to be dead in Act 3 or Act 4. Meanwhile, everyone has at least one potato within reach. Mary's taken to carving hers with tiny symbols, like a rudimentary talisman. "It's to keep the bad spirits out of my voice," she says, twirling her spud like a magic wand. The rational part of you wants to dismiss all of this, but the deeper you go into this world, the more you realize it makes its own sense. These are people with nothing, no job security, no health care, no stable income. You cling to what works. If the potato feels like it's helping, then it is. And for the first time, you really see the unspoken tension of their lives, the fear of illness, the dread of a bad crowd, the constant hustle. They're performers, yes, but also hustlers, wanderers, gamblers of their own fate. If a weird, ugly root gives them one extra layer of confidence before stepping on stage, well, you'd carry one too. That night, Tom slips his potato into his pocket and strides out onto the stage. The torches blaze, the crowd roars, and the first line is delivered perfectly. You hold your breath, expecting the usual interruptions, the heckles, the thrown produce. But none come. Maybe it's coincidence. Maybe the crowd's just good tonight. Or maybe it's the potato. The days slip by in a tumble of verses, rainstorms, and smoky taverns. You've started keeping your own potato, not so much for luck, but because everyone else does, and you're too superstitious, or too peer-pressured, to go without. It sits warm against your thigh in a borrowed jerkin pocket, oddly comforting, like a small, dense promise that things might go all right today. Probably not great, but all right. One morning, the troupe gathers under a gray, slumped canvas behind the theater to discuss the next play. It's not Shakespeare this time, but something bawdy and weird with a subplot about sheep theft and a ghost that only appears to left-handed men. Everyone is eating something: bread crusts, salted fish, dried apples, and of course potatoes, roasted, raw, half-buried, and in one case mashed into a paste that's being used as impromptu stage makeup. Wrinkle filler, Mary winks. You find yourself watching how these actors move through the world, half in and half out of it. On stage, they're kings and witches. Off stage, they're broke, shivering in alleys, whispering about the price of onions. They're not respected. They're often lumped in with thieves and pickpockets. Their theaters are routinely shut down during plague outbreaks, and their wages, if they get them, are pitiful. They sleep where they can, eat what they can scavenge or steal, and dream of court performances that almost never come. Which is where potatoes really begin to shine, because in a world without storage lockers or personal dressing rooms, anything you carry must earn its space. A potato fits the bill perfectly. It's food, yes, but it's also weight, balance, an impromptu prop, a makeshift weapon, and for one actor you meet named Crispin, it's even a business strategy. Crispin is a wiry, fast-talking fellow who plays fools and clowns with such charm that even the upper gallery snobs sometimes toss him real coin. He carries 6 potatoes, distributed across various coat linings and sewn-in sleeves. Keeps me symmetrical, he grins. Also keeps me regular. He isn't joking. He claims different potatoes serve different purposes. The meal one, the show potato, the thrower, the heater, used to warm hands before stage fights, and the trader, which is usually the smoothest and cleanest for bartering ale or borrowing a cloak. The 6th is purely emotional support. Her name's Tilda, he says solemnly. You wonder if this is all an elaborate joke, until you see him actually swap a small golden potato for 2 roasted sausages and a handful of dried figs. You're too stunned to speak. Historians still argue whether this kind of barter was widespread or just anecdotal eccentricity. There's almost nothing in official records about actors trading potatoes like currency, but that might just be because no one thought it worth writing down. Still, Crispin isn't the only one. Others in the troupe talk openly about spud value. Bigger potatoes for bigger trades, fancy ones for impressing potential patrons, tiny ones to hand to children in the crowd, cheap gifts that win applause. But there's another use that surprises you. During rehearsal, one actor grows woozy from a stomach bug. Instead of calling for a physician, Tom hands him a potato and tells him to press it to his stomach. The man does, eyes closed, breathing slowly. And it works, or it seems to. He gets up 15 minutes later, pale but grinning. "Took the foulness right out," he whispers, pressing the potato to Tom's hand like it's some ancient relic. "Don't eat it, though. She's spent." You learn this isn't a one-off. There's a kind of folk logic to it. Potatoes are believed by some to pull illness from the body, absorbing it like a sponge. Afterward, you're supposed to burn or bury the potato, never eat it. That's considered both disgusting and dangerous. It all feels absurd, until you remember how little anyone understood about illness. The plague, still haunting the city like a grim footnote, is blamed on everything from bad air to divine punishment to sins of the stage. Of course, they'd turn to earthy little miracles that could be held close and believed in. Potatoes didn't question you, didn't report you to the church, and didn't ask for coin. One evening, Tom pulls you aside. "Come see this," he says, voice low. He leads you to a small alley behind the theater, where a group of actors have gathered around a candlelit circle. Each of them holds a potato. A few have carved small runes into theirs. One is wrapped in a ribbon, another is painted with red ochre. They begin to murmur. Nothing formal, just a loose chant of gratitude, hope, and nervous laughter. They press the potatoes to their foreheads, then tuck them back into their pockets or pouches. "Performance insurance," Tom whispers. You ask if this is a regular ritual. He nods. Especially before a debut, or after someone coughs blood on stage. A bit dramatic? Yes, but you can't deny the focus, the intention. It feels less like superstition and more like community, like the shared rituals that form when everyone's scraping by and clinging to one another. And the potato, humble and grubby, is their glue. You think back to the audience, how they only see the finished product, the poetry, the costumes, the illusion. They never see the pocket potatoes, the talismans, the gut aches, the whispered hopes. They don't see Mary holding her spud like a rosary, or Crispin warming his hands on Tilda before a slapstick scene. They certainly don't see the quiet graves behind the playhouse, where a few actors rest under unmarked mounds. Tom tells you 2 of them died last winter, one from fever, one from exposure. Both had potatoes on them when they were found. "We buried them with new ones," he says quietly. Felt right. The potato isn't just a snack, it's a symbol of resourcefulness, defiance, absurdity. It's theater in edible form, ugly but transformative, and it belongs in this world, nestled in jerkin pockets, handed from hand to hand like a talisman of barely controlled chaos. Later that night, you're walking home through the rain when you slip on a loose cobblestone and fall flat on your back. As you groan and check yourself for injuries, you feel something press into your hip. Your potato, safe and whole. You start to laugh, because of course, the potato broke your fall. The next morning greets you with wet boots, a head full of fog, and the faint scent of cabbage stew lingering in the alley behind the theater. Your potato has developed a soft spot, nothing dramatic, just a bruise. But you can't quite bring yourself to swap it out yet. It's been with you through rain, sword practice, and at least 3 bad renditions of Hamlet's soliloquy. You give it a gentle pat before tucking it back into your pocket. You've started to notice things. Not just potato-related, although, let's be honest, that's most of your focus now. But other things, the little rituals. The way actors always tap the stage with their left foot before entering. The muttered Latin phrases before the lights. Red, torches, go up. The odd habit of hanging rosemary bundles backstage to ward off the jealous eye. Historians still argue whether these rituals were genuinely believed to carry mystical weight or were simply traditions passed on like lines in a script. Either way, the result is the same. A theater full of people doing weird little dances to keep the universe from squashing them like a bug. But the potato remains king. Today, you're heading out with Tom and Mary to visit a traveling troupe performing across the river. They're called the Owl's Teeth, and they've got a reputation for being bold, a little unhinged, and somehow always ahead of their time. You suspect they might be the sort of people who wear potatoes as earrings and call it character work. They welcome you warmly, or at least with exaggerated bows and sarcastic toasts. You notice right away, every one of them has at least one potato. One actor, Piers, keeps his strung on a cord around his neck like a pendant. Another, Sabine, has sewn half a dozen into the hem of her skirt so it sways heavily as she walks. Waited for better presents, she explains, eyes twinkling. They claim potatoes keep them grounded, literally. Keeps my feet in the roll, Piers says while balancing on one leg. You try doing Richard III in Wind without a little extra ballast. And while that might be nonsense, you can't deny they're magnetic on stage. You watch their performance from a shaky platform made of stolen planks and wishfully nailed together crates. The crowd is rougher than you're used to, filled with gamblers, sailors, and one man who's clearly just here for the snacks. But they're locked in, completely spellbound. Then comes a moment that makes you pause. During a dramatic death scene, Piers dramatically draws his final breath, clutches his chest, and pulls out his potato. He holds it up to the heavens, whispers something unintelligible, and drops it beside him as he falls. The audience gasps. Someone weeps. A child claps like they've just seen a miracle. After the show, Tom nudges you. That was new. You nod. It worked, though. Piers explains later, over badly poured ale, that it was a gamble. Wanted to see if the potato could symbolize the soul leaving the body. He smirks. Or maybe just confuse them into feeling something. You've never respected a tuber more. The Owl's Teeth aren't just eccentric, they're part of a growing fringe within the actor world. A kind of underground movement of performers who embrace strange objects, foods, and rituals as extensions of performance. Potatoes are just the current trend, but they're one with staying power. They're simple, iconic, absurd in the perfect way. There are rumors, half laughed, half believed, that Queen Elizabeth herself once received a gift of potatoes wrapped in silk and sprinkled with saffron, and refused to eat them, choosing instead to display them in a cabinet of curiosities. She probably thought they were enchanted eggs, Mary jokes. Still, there's something theatrical about potatoes. They look like props already, slightly grotesque, oddly human, full of possibilities. They're versatile. You can carve them, paint them, pocket them, throw them at hecklers, carefully. And in some very special circles, you can even sell them as signed memorabilia. That's right. At the back of a pub known as the Black Barrel, you find a booth where an aging actor named Gregory sits beside a small box marked Autographed Character Potatoes. 1 farthing. He sells spuds he claims were held in pocket during entire performance of various plays. There's even one labeled, "From the night the balcony collapsed, survived." Gregory doesn't smile much. They buy him, he says, shrugging. They keep him. Who am I to say why? You buy one, naturally. It's small, slightly green, and smells faintly of lavender. A good year, probably. Historians still debate whether this kind of commerce was a fluke or a reflection of a larger black market of performer relics. There's no official record of potato memorabilia, but that's not surprising. You don't write down every weird thing the poor do to survive. Meanwhile, back at the Globe, you've started seeing subtle shifts. More actors are treating their potatoes with ceremony, dabbing oil on them, wrapping them in cloth. One actor insists on whispering his lines to his spud before every performance. Another has started using his as a stage note holder. He's carved little slots in it for parchment tabs. It's becoming more than habit. It's identity. In a world where status is slippery and performance is survival, every advantage counts. A lucky charm, a secret weapon, a stand-in for confidence. They all add up, especially when your job depends on convincing drunk nobles and pickpockets that you're royalty. One night, a drunk in the pit starts heckling Tom during a monologue. He doesn't break character, doesn't flinch. He just slowly reaches into his cloak, pulls out his potato, and holds it out like a threat. The pit goes silent. Then the drunk starts laughing. Others join in. Tension broken. Tom finishes the scene to roaring applause. Later you ask what that was. Power play, he grins. No one messes with a man who weaponizes tubers. And you realize he's right. The air turns crisp. Autumn creeps into London with a sigh of smoke and wood rot, and your potato, still the same one, is starting to show its age. The edges have gone soft. It smells vaguely like a compost bin, but you can't throw it out. It's practically a cast member now. You've performed with it, confided in it, maybe even muttered a few curses at it when your lines went missing mid-scene. You're not the only one feeling sentimental. Actors begin comparing their spuds like gamblers comparing lucky dice. There's Leo, who's convinced that his wrinkled red potato, he calls it the Blood Bishop, saved him from slipping on stage during a thunderstorm cue. And Edith, who has hers wrapped in velvet and insists it once hummed during a particularly intense reading of Macbeth. No one argues, no one even blinks. Because at this point, these stories are just normal. In the dressing corridor, a cramped, dark space that smells perpetually like old beer and powdered bone, you stumble upon a small wooden board nailed to the wall. Someone has carved "Potato Wall of Glory" into it, and beneath it are tiny hooks, each with a shriveled potato dangling like a grim little medal. Under each one is a name and a date. This one saved us from a collapsing backdrop, Tom points. That one rolled out during a duel and distracted the crowd from a missed cue. You can't tell if he's proud or embarrassed. Probably both. One night, during a particularly raucous performance of a comedy no one remembers the name of, just something involving a goat, a missing loaf, and a prince with constipation, you watch Mary improvise an entire scene when a stage prop goes missing. She steps forward, draws her potato from a hidden sleeve, holds it aloft like a relic, and solemnly declares, "Behold, the lost jewel of Aragonia." The crowd loses its collective mind. It's a moment of brilliance. You're crying from holding in laughter. And as the curtain, well, curtain-like bedsheet, drops, she whispers, "That was completely accidental. I just panicked." Theater magic, half planning, half sheer potato-based panic. Historians still argue whether this kind of on-the-fly substitution, especially using food, was an established improvisation technique or just a desperate actor's reflex. But the evidence, anecdotal as it may be, suggests that edible props had their heyday. Cheese wheels, roasted birds, even loaves of bread stood in for everything from helmets to babies to treasure chests. Still, the potato is unmatched in versatility. It's neutral-colored. It doesn't leak unless you abuse it, and it's heavy enough to mimic importance, but light enough to fling across a stage without breaking your co-star's nose. Mostly. Of course, not everyone's thrilled with the trend. A stern-faced stage manager named Rafe, a man who sweats permanently and communicates mostly in disappointed sighs, issues a decree. No more potato props during tragedy. It lasts all of 2 days, until Crispin, always the rule-breaker, sneaks his potato into a funeral scene, nestling it in a cradle meant to represent a dead child. The audience doesn't notice, but every actor on stage develops a coughing fit, trying to hold in laughter. After the show, Rafe threatens to boil the entire cast. No one takes him seriously. They know he keeps his own potato in his sock. But this sparks a new idea, the potato registry, a giant book kept backstage where actors log the name, description, and role of each active potato in the troupe. For tracking purposes, someone jokes, like livestock, but starchier. You flip through the registry one rainy evening. Sir Rutrick, battle potato, last seen under trap door. Delilah, understudy Spud, double cast as infant and ingot. Unnamed, bruised, possibly cursed, will not stop vibrating. There's even an informal ranking system with stars given for number of performances and audience interaction. Some potatoes have fan followings. One, named Old Knobbly, reportedly received a love letter from a viewer who thought he was the most expressive prop on stage. You start thinking about retiring yours. But there's a lingering attachment. It's not just a joke anymore. It's part of the rhythm. Like tightening your boots the same way before every show. Like muttering the same nonsense prayer before stepping out. It grounds you. Which is why, on the day of the Queen's rumored appearance at a matinee, your first ever royal-adjacent performance, you can't bring yourself to leave it behind. Everyone's on edge. Wigs are powdered to within an inch of their lives. Doublets are scrubbed. Crispin's even trimmed the moss from his shoes. And backstage, a quiet terror grips the cast. This is the kind of show that makes or breaks reputations. That decides whether your name gets scrawled in a pamphlet or scrawled on a debtor's wall. Right before the show begins, Mary grabs your arm. Do you have it? You nod and pull out the slightly shriveled lump that has traveled with you through every weather, every dropped line, every creaky plank of this chaotic world. She kisses her own potato gently, tucks it into her corset, and says, "Let's go lie to some nobles." The lights go up. The music stutters to life. The first lines fly. And somehow, it works. You hit every cue. Every laugh lands. The Queen doesn't stand, but she doesn't leave either, which is practically applause. And then, in a climactic moment, as Crispin leaps on stage to deliver a monologue that probably wasn't in the original script, but definitely belongs now, he whips out a gilded potato, polished to a mirror shine, and proclaims, This is what remains when love outlasts war." The crowd roars, nobles blink. One lady fans herself like she's about to faint. You don't even know what it means, but it's perfect. After the show, the Queen's steward approaches. You brace for a reprimand. Instead, he says, "Her Majesty was intrigued. She wishes to know if the golden potato is available for loan." You nearly faint. Backstage, the cast erupts into chaos. Everyone wants credit for the idea. Someone starts crafting a royal Spud plaque. And Crispin, he just winks and says, "Tilda's gonna need a tiara." That night, as the tavern overflows with celebratory cheap wine and questionable meat pies, you hold your potato close. It's bent, a little moldy, smells like theater dust, but it might be the luckiest thing you own. You wake to the sounds of distant lute music, a dog barking at absolutely nothing, and someone shouting about missing breeches. The world smells like damp straw and roasted chestnuts. Outside your window, a pair of pigeons fight over a crust of bread with all the elegance of drunk fencing students. And nestled against your hip is your increasingly disreputable potato. You roll onto your side and sigh. It's going to be one of those days, the kind where props vanish, the audience is half asleep, and the new boy forgets his cues because he's too busy trying to flirt with the noble's daughter in row 2. But you've got a plan. Sort of. Because lately you've been hearing rumors, whispers in the wings, people talking about the Order of the Golden Tuber. Yes, really. It starts as a joke. Someone claims to have seen an actor disappear behind the globe and re-emerge with a different potato and a glazed look in their eyes. They said they were chosen, the witness reports, deadpan, by the starch. At first, you laugh it off. Theater people love their weird stories. But then more tales creep in. A stagehand swears he saw a circle of actors kneeling under moonlight, potatoes in hand, chanting something that may have been an old Welsh harvest blessing, or possibly just the menu from a very confused tavern. And Crispin? He won't confirm or deny anything. He just smiles too wide and says, "There are things we potato bearers understand that others simply don't." Historians still argue whether secret societies existed among Elizabethan actors, or whether these were just deeply committed drinking clubs with excellent branding. Some point to the records of the Order of the Burning Candle, or the Gentleman of the Wooden Skirt. But there's nothing about tubers. That part may have been a purely theatrical invention, never meant to leave the dressing room. You don't care, because now you need to know. So you start digging. Not literally, you haven't lost that much dignity yet, but you do start asking questions. Carefully, quietly. Tom plays dumb. "Order of the what?" Mary winks and says, "Ask me again when the moon's full." Even Rafe gives you a look and mutters, "I knew they'd try to recruit another one." Hope your soul's clean. Eventually, it's Edith who cracks. You catch her oiling her potato with rosemary tincture and humming something that sounds suspiciously like a hymn. When you ask, casual as can be, about the so-called order, she freezes. "You didn't hear it from me," she whispers. "But if you're serious, meet me at the abandoned mill near the docks. Midnight. Bring your potato." So of course you go. The mill is cold. Wind whistles through cracks in the boards. You step lightly over rotting timbers and the occasional sleeping rat. And there, bathed in the pale flicker of a single lantern, are 5 figures in cloaks. And potatoes. They're seated in a circle, each holding a spud like it's a holy relic. One wears a crown made entirely of mashed potato and laurel leaves. Another taps their spud gently against the floor, in time with a heartbeat you can't quite hear. Edith gestures for you to join them. You sit. You hold out your potato. It quivers, probably from the cold, but maybe from reverence. Who knows anymore? The leader speaks. "Welcome, bearer of starch. Tonight you begin the path of the rooted one." You try very hard not to laugh, but the ceremony is oddly beautiful. They speak of grounding, of growth in darkness, of surviving against odds. Potatoes, they say, are the theater incarnate. Humble, resilient, misunderstood, occasionally tossed across a stage. There's a chant, a toast, with wine infused with potato skins, naturally, and a brief moment where someone swears their spud glowed. You suspect phosphorescent fungus, or a trick of the lantern. Still, when it's over, you feel something. A weird little flicker of connection. Not just to the other actors, but to the craft itself. Because it's not really about the potatoes, it's about belief. Ritual. The small comforts you carry in your pocket when everything else is chaos. You're handed a small pin, a crude potato carved in bone, and told to wear it only when you seek courage in absurdity. You tuck it into your doublet. Say nothing, but your grin says everything. Back at the Globe, the next few days blur together. Rehearsals, performances, rainstorms, and spilled mead, and the never-ending wardrobe crisis involving a moth infestation and a very dramatic scream from the costumer. Through it all, you notice the signs. A potato subtly held aloft before curtain, a gesture toward the floor before an entrance, a tiny nod exchanged between actors mid-scene. The order is everywhere, quiet, hidden, hilarious, and you are now a part of it. Historians still debate whether such rituals served as stress relief, morale boosts, or actual proto-religious movements within performer communities. Most agree it was probably all 3. Because when your life depends on audience laughter, shifting patronage, And whether or not the roof leaks directly onto your costume, you cling to what steadies you, whether it's a faith, a friend, or a root vegetable. One afternoon, after a particularly disastrous rehearsal involving a prop fire and someone's pants getting accidentally set alight, you find Crispin backstage. He's carving tiny runes into a new potato with a knife that looks older than most of the set pieces. "What's that for?" you ask. He grins. "A gift. For the next inductee." You nod. "Think they'll believe any of this?" Crispin holds up the potato. "Doesn't matter if they do. It only matters that we do." And you realize this whole thing, from bruised spuds to secret midnight meetings, it's theater distilled. Make-believe wrapped in truth. A farce that somehow holds your whole life together. That night, you take the stage with a lighter step. Your potato rests comfortably in your pocket, worn smooth from weeks of nervous thumb rubs. The audience is loud. Someone in the back has already started heckling. A dog runs across the stage before the second act, and yet, you're ready. Because this time you've got more than just your lines. You've got legacy, you've got laughter, and you've got starch. You don't plan on becoming a mentor. You're just trying to survive the plague-addled chaos of Elizabethan stage life with minimal injuries and your potato still intact. But then this gangly new apprentice shows up, blinking too much, tripping over his own feet, wearing a ruffled collar so aggressively starched it could slice a melon, and he stares at you like you're the bard himself. You groan internally. Here we go. His name's Will, of course. Half the cast is named Will, but this one is different. Eager, wide-eyed, and terribly afraid of everything, especially the trapdoor. You catch him muttering apologies to it one morning like it's cursed. Maybe it is. Probably just rats, though. He fumbles lines, loses costumes, and nearly sets fire to the rehearsal notes by leaning too close to a lantern. Yet he's endearing, earnest. And worst of all, he notices your potato. "Is that for a scene?" he asks cautiously. You pause, glance at the well-worn lump in your palm. Yes, you lie. Very dramatic scene. Big speech. He nods solemnly. Ah, of course. But 2 days later, you catch him cradling a raw sweet potato backstage. It's still covered in dirt and clearly stolen from the kitchen. He's holding it like a relic, whispering lines into it. You've created a monster, or a protege. It's hard to tell the difference these days. Soon enough, other apprentices begin following suit. Potatoes appear in unlikely places, hidden in boots, tucked into sleeves, even gently placed inside goblets during rehearsals. It becomes an unspoken rite of passage. The senior actors roll their eyes, but secretly approve. It's tradition now. You take Will under your wing. You teach him how to cheat out, how to deliver lines like he means them, and, most importantly, how to keep a potato dry during a rain-soaked matinee. One day he asks, "Does the potato actually do anything?" And you smile, slow and sly. Only if you believe it does. Historians still argue whether these superstitions were genuine beliefs or simply the emotional coping mechanisms of overworked actors with questionable diets. The truth probably lies somewhere between magical thinking and sheer desperation. But for Will, it becomes gospel. He starts carving tiny initials into his potato. W for himself and then others, friends, mentors, the girl he's quietly in love with but too scared to speak to. Each letter a kind of protection, a wish whispered into the root. You remember doing the same once, before you stopped needing to ask for luck and started making it. The Globe hosts a visiting troupe one week, foreign actors from the Low Countries with impeccable wigs and better enunciation. They bring props made of glass and wood, painted so skillfully it looks like velvet. The contrast is jarring, sleek versus scrappy. They mock your potatoes. At first it's subtle, a raised eyebrow, A smirk. Then they start calling your group the Starchlings. You try to brush it off, but Will looks wounded. So, of course, Crispin hatches a plan. During the joint performance night, meant to foster cross-theatrical camaraderie, you all take the stage for a shared scene. Just one page, barely 30 lines. But halfway through, a potato rolls across the stage, deliberate, silent, loaded with meaning. The audience gasps, laughs, leans forward. Even the visiting actors freeze, unsure whether to react or pretend it didn't happen. You pick it up solemnly, turn to the crowd, and without skipping a beat, improvise. Even in foreign lands our roots endure. Applause erupts. The visiting troupe is stunned. And Will? He's beaming like a man newly anointed. Afterwards, someone starts whispering about the Starchling resistance. It's a joke, but it sticks. Potatoes become not just superstition, not just a crutch, but a statement. A rebellion against over-formality, against erasing the messy, imperfect art that lives in London's muddy alleys and wobbly stages. You find Will painting his sweet potato gold a few nights later. "I want it to shine," he says, like it means something. You don't stop him. Because the truth is, these strange rituals do mean something. In a world where nobility frowns from balconies and rats chew through your shoe mid-dialogue, meaning is whatever you carry in your pocket and refuse to explain. And maybe, just maybe, the order needs fresh blood. You take him aside one night. "Can you keep a secret?" His eyes widen. He nods so hard his feathered cap slips sideways. "Good," you whisper. "Meet me at the mill, midnight. Bring your potato." You don't need to say more. Historians still puzzle over whether these underground ceremonies held any real power or whether they were just elaborate bonding rituals. Some claim fragments of scribbled oaths and potato-shaped seals in the margins of old prompt books. Others dismiss them as fantasy. But you know better. You know how it feels to kneel in a drafty, half-collapsed building, moonlight filtering through broken boards, holding a piece of root vegetable like it's sacred. You know what it's like to share eye contact with another actor and feel for a fleeting moment completely understood. And now Will knows too. He returns from his induction glowing with pride. He tucks his pin into his collar. He walks with a new confidence, slightly ridiculous, wildly endearing. The next show, he doesn't fumble a single line. In fact, he nails it. Every cue, every breath, every glance. He even improvises when a backdrop collapses mid-scene, turning to the audience and proclaiming, "Even the heavens cannot contain our tale." You swear the Queen's cousin actually clapped. Backstage, Will hugs his potato like it's a medal. You pat his shoulder. "Told you." The other actors don't say it aloud, but they start treating him differently. He's no longer just the awkward apprentice with the frizzed wig. He's part of the fold, part of the myth. And when he gifts you a new potato, painted, carved, sealed with wax, you accept it quietly. Because sometimes the most important stories aren't the ones written by scholars or printed in royal courts. Sometimes they're whispered in green rooms, carried in coat pockets, and passed from hand to hand like sacred talismans. Sometimes they're a little soft and slightly moldy. But they're yours. It begins with a rumor. They always do. A tavern murmur, half lost in the froth of spilled ale and the clatter of dice on warped wood. Someone swears they saw a man at the Swan Theatre pull a potato from his breeches mid-soliloquy, and the audience wept. You raise an eyebrow, because that's your move, that's your potato moment, the one you've built, refined, perfected. Are actors now just lifting bits from each other like cheap props? Crispin shrugs when you bring it up. "Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery," he says, then adds, "unless it's done better than you, in which case it's a declaration of war." He's only half joking. Will takes it harder. "What if they steal the whole act?" he whispers one night as you all huddle around a guttering candle. "What if they use it wrong?" And there it is, the strange, creeping possessiveness that comes with any tradition. Once your weird ritual leaves the original circle, it stops being an inside joke and starts becoming common. Which is, of course, when things spiral. The next week, a group of apprentices from the curtain show up flaunting potatoes like they're medals. One of them has his strapped to his belt in a little leather pouch, monogrammed. Another has fashioned a miniature cape for his, stitched from stolen costume scraps. A third boasts he's baked his into a pie and plans to eat it before every performance to absorb its powers from within. "You cannot make this stuff up," you corner one backstage. "Where did you hear about this?" He grins. "Heard from a boy who heard from a girl who saw a stagehand at the Rose Theater slice one in half to reveal a tiny scroll hidden inside. Said it contained a prophecy about acting greatness." You blink. "A prophecy. In a potato," he nods solemnly. "Taters of destiny. They're calling it now." And just like that, the thing that started as superstition, then shifted into secret ceremony, now slides toward full-blown urban legend. Historians still argue whether any of these potato-based legends were genuinely believed or simply part of the rich tapestry of theatrical tall tales. Some claim performers leaned into the absurdity just to mess with rivals or distract critics. Others think it was a deliberate myth-building exercise, branding, but with vegetables. Either way, it grows fast. Soon you see actors you've never met performing elaborate potato blessings before shows. One group does a circle dance with their spuds under the full moon. Another buries theirs beneath the stage for luck from below. Someone starts rubbing garlic on theirs for protective energy. And by the end of the week, the entire left wing smells like an undercooked stew. You try to stay calm. But Crispin, he's furious. "They're desecrating the starch," he cries, brandishing his old, shriveled talisman like a weapon. There's no reverence left, no discipline, no standards. Edith suggests a summit, so you organize it. In secret. Invitations carved into yams because you've run out of good potatoes and no one trusts turnips. You gather representatives from 6 major companies: Globe, Swan, Rose, Curtain, Blackfriars, and even the tiny, half-collapsed cockle-shell playhouse run out of a pub cellar. They meet in a candlelit hall, long wooden table piled with bread, cheese, and of course, one central ceremonial potato on a red velvet cushion. The air is tense. Voices rise. One actor demands recognition of his original creation, The Dance of the Dual Taters, a performance piece involving juggling and interpretive weeping. Another insists their group was first to name the tuber the root of true art. Crispin nearly flips the table when someone refers to the order as the Starch Club. But then Will stands, small, nervous, but holding a golden potato with both hands like it's holy. "This isn't about credit," he says softly. "It's about what it means to us, how it steadies us, how it binds us. We're actors. We live in chaos. This is the one thing that stays in our pocket when everything else falls apart." Silence follows, then slow, reluctant nods. A pact is made. No branding. No selling potato talismans at the stage door. No eating them unless properly thanked first. And no claiming potato visions unless at least 2 others also saw the glow. You have Edith to thank for that last clause. Historians still debate whether such a meeting ever happened. There are whispers in letters, vague references in diaries, and one half-burned flyer advertising the first annual gathering of rooted artists that may or may not be satire. But you remember it clearly. You remember the laughter, the sudden camaraderie, the way actors from rival troupes passed spuds across the table like peace offerings. And you remember the vote. The order would remain secret, yes, but its spirit would live on. Each company would honor the potato in their own way. One would keep it as ritual, another as comedy, a third as silent symbol, tucked quietly into set designs or painted into backgrounds for those sharp-eyed enough to spot them. You return to the globe feeling lighter, and then everything explodes. Not literally. That would come later. Fire safety was mostly aspirational in your era, but word spreads that someone at the curtain has written a play, a satire, the tragedy of Sir Starkalow, a full-on mockery of the Order, featuring scenes like the blessing of the baked one, the betrayal of the rootless, and the Great Frying Pan Massacre. The play is a hit. The audience laughs. Nobles love it. Your troupe is furious. Will looks betrayed. We let them in, and they do this. Crispin starts planning a counter-production. Revenge, he mutters, must be mashed. You talk them down, because you know something the curtain doesn't. Their joke, their sneering little farce. It made the legend stronger. People start asking questions, wanting to know the real story. They ask for potatoes at the market with the same hushed reverence once reserved for rosaries or love tokens. A child leaves one at the Globe's door for the brave actors. Someone paints one into the corner of a noble's portrait. The Order goes underground again, but now it thrives. Because it's no longer about hiding in a dusty mill and whispering chants in bad Latin. Now it's about what you carry in your heart, and maybe, just maybe, in your pocket. You're not trying to start a fashion trend. It just sort of happens. One chill morning, while rehearsing a scene where you have to kneel in front of a duke, your potato falls from your pocket and rolls center stage. Again. The crowd chuckles. Again. But this time, instead of scooping it up like an embarrassed thief caught in the act, you lean into it. You pluck the potato off the boards with exaggerated reverence, bow to it, and declare, "Lo, the earth yields forth its wisdom." Cue rapturous applause. That's when the costume master gets an idea, and 3 days later you are handed a doublet with a custom-lined pocket, satin, reinforced, potato-sized. You stare at it like it's a gift from heaven. Because in your world of itchy wool, collapsing corsets, and hastily restitched hose, this is luxury. This is progress. Word spreads fast. Suddenly all the actors want one. Crispin commissions 3, just in case. Will wears his inside out for reasons known only to him and possibly the moon. Edith refuses, insisting a true believer carries the root bare, close to the skin. But the trend doesn't stop with actors. Audience members start asking for them too. Potato pockets, the vendors say. Very fashionable, fresh from the globe. Never mind that most are sewn by a drunk costumer named Tilly, who swears she once dressed a ghost. They're flying off the carts like meat pies on a feast day. And then, oh then, it escalates. One noble shows up in full brocade pantaloons with 15 tiny potato pockets stitched into the seams. He calls it the tuber array, claims it brings him creative energy. Another noblewoman wears a cape with dried potato skins braided into the trim. A statement on mortality, she intones, and everyone pretends to understand. Historians still argue whether these odd garments were sincere expressions of Elizabethan theater culture or just nobles playing dress-up with peasant aesthetics for sport. Fringe theories suggest it was a coded critique of economic instability. Others say it was just fun. Whatever the reason, you now live in a world where you can't swing a wooden sword without hitting someone with a root vegetable tucked somewhere questionable. You adapt. You design a signature move, a mid-performance spin with a hand flourish to check your pocket. If it clinks, the audience knows the potato's still there. Safe, magical, blessed. It becomes your brand, which is when the tailors strike. Yes, the Tailors Guild, Turns out there are rules about pocket sizes, about fabric use, about unlicensed novelty accessories. They slap a fine on your troop. 3 shillings per potato pocket. Tilly faints. Crispin tries to bribe the inspector with a pie that turns out to be full of linen scraps. You don't ask why, so you gather in secret, whispering by lantern light, plotting your response. Edith proposes smuggling the pockets inside cloaks. Will draws up blueprints for reversible waistcoats. Crispin insists on disguising them as pigeon-carrying compartments, just in case we need to send messages or snacks. You suggest a simpler idea. Make the pockets removable. Hook and loop. Hidden stitches. Quick swap-outs. The order evolves again. Now each potato has a pocket guardian, a tiny cloth satchel, often hand-painted, embroidered with initials, charms, or cryptic symbols like stars and spiral roots. Each one is a tiny wearable shrine. You begin gifting them to fellow actors after opening nights. No words, you say, handing one over. No refunds, Crispin always adds. You line your own with old script scraps. One day you find a note inside you didn't put there. You are more than your worst performance. You don't cry, but you hold it for a long time. And then, of course, someone takes it too far. The Cockleshell Playhouse unveils a new comedy titled The Pocket Conspiracy, where the entire cast has potatoes sewn into increasingly absurd places. Hat brims, shoe soles, glove tips. One actor stuffs theirs into a codpiece. The crowd is hysterical. You're slightly horrified. That's not homage, Edith mutters. That's heresy. But Crispin's laughing. Let them joke. They're still carrying it. He's right. Even the satire keeps the magic alive. Still, you're itching for something deeper, something older. So you travel. You and Will head north to visit an actor friend in York, who claims his great-uncle once uncovered an ancestral tater during a storm. Came up from the roots like it had a message, he said. You find the spot, a rocky outcrop behind an old barn, and dig a little, half-laughing, mostly for the story. And there it is, not a potato, a tiny clay figure, hollow, with root strands pressed into its surface. You look at Will, he looks at you, and you both start to wonder. Historians still debate whether such figurines were common among traveling performers or if they were simply repurposed fertility charms. Theories abound: pagan remnants, harvest tokens, acting idols. Whatever it was, it feels right. You take it home, you make a mold, and suddenly the order has a new tradition, the root guardian. Tiny clay amulets tucked alongside your potato, one to represent the earthly body, one for the spirit. 2 halves of a whole actor's soul. They become wildly popular. Crispin paints his like a tiny demon. Edith shapes hers like a badger. Will, bless him, names his Sir Spudwick and gives it a tiny cloak. You start hiding them around the theater. One under the lighting scaffold, another in the prop chest, one tucked in the crack behind the royal box. Little sentries of luck, creativity, and just a dash of superstition. No one says it aloud, but you all start feeling steadier. Like the chaos doesn't own you anymore. Like the stage isn't something you survive, but something you shape. One audience member returns night after night just to look for the new hiding spot. She starts leaving notes. Found the guardian. Left him a plum. You leave a reply. He likes plums. Thank you. And so the order grows again. Not louder, not grander, just deeper, more layered. Like a story inside a story. Like a potato under all that dirt and skin hiding a heart of something warm. Your back aches in new and exciting ways, but you don't care. You've been crouched beneath the globe stage for 3 hours now, nose full of sawdust and mystery. You're helping Crispin install what he's calling the hidden shrine of the 9th root. It's part prank, part performance art, part spiritual insurance policy. He says it'll boost morale. Really, it's a shoebox with candles, 3 potatoes of various shrivel levels, and a woodcut of Queen Elizabeth. Winking. You light the final stub of wax, step back, and try to ignore the fact that someone snuck a sausage into the arrangement. Offerings, Crispin whispers. It's all about energy. He's not wrong. Energy in the theater is everything. And lately things are crackling. You feel it in the boards, in the way lines hit just right. Even the crowd seems more alive. They laugh louder, gasp harder, toss apple cores more respectfully. Maybe it's the order's influence. Maybe it's the fact that everyone's found a little ritual, a little comfort to press into their palm before the curtain lifts. Or maybe it's just magic. Not the spell-casting, wand-waving kind, but the sneaky kind. The kind that blooms in secret, when people believe in something hard enough that it starts to believe in them back. Still, magic needs upkeep. And soon the order faces its greatest threat yet, the plague. You knew this part was coming. You've seen the signs, nobles fleeing the city, theaters closing without warning, entire streets marked with red paint and silence. One day the globe just locks its doors. No announcement, no final show. Just a shutter, a clunk, and the creeping realization that the laughter has stopped. Will panics. Crispin retreats into his room and writes 14 new sonnets to his potato. You don't ask to read them. You shouldn't read them. Edith organizes what she calls the root pantry. Each actor donates a spare potato for emergencies. They're stored in a hollowed-out ale barrel and counted daily. There's a ledger and everything. You try to stay hopeful, but the city changes. Quiet settles in like dust. Some actors leave, some disappear. You wonder if the order was just a passing fever, a silly thing you did in a brighter season. But one night, while wandering the alleys just to remember what noise felt like, you spot something. A chalk drawing on a boarded shop. A crude potato, crowned and smiling, with the words, "Stage strong," underneath. You stand there for a long time, and when you return home, you start writing letters. To the rose, to the curtain, to the ones who left. You write, still carrying it. Slowly, replies come back, scribbled in margins, folded into parcels of dried herbs. One arrives carved into the side of a turnip for reasons you'll never understand. Each one says some version of always. Historians still argue whether these messages, sometimes referred to as the starch scrolls, were genuine communication between troops or simply creative ways to stay sane during crisis. Some believe they sparked an underground mail system powered by actors turned messengers. What's certain is this: meet in secret. The order doesn't fade. In quiet inns, in empty halls where echoes feel safer than applause. They recite scenes to pigeons. They practice lines to shadows. One group reportedly staged an entire play for a single ferret. You do your part, too. You start carrying 2 potatoes. One for you, one for whoever needs it. Crispin does puppet shows in courtyards, tiny potatoes on sticks, retelling Shakespeare with titles like Othello au gratin and The Merchant of Venison Stew. Edith makes blessing bundles, bits of ribbon, thread, dried peel, handed off like secrets to anyone who looks too sad too long. Will writes, pages and pages, most of it nonsense, some of it perfect. The city holds its breath for months, maybe years. Time gets bendy when everything feels the same shade of gray. And then one day someone sneezes and no one panics. A cart rolls by shouting, "Fresh turnips," and it sounds hopeful, not ominous. The globe unlocks, dusty, smelling of rot and rats and wet wool, but intact. You walk back in and your feet remember every board. Your voice bounces off the rafters like it's been waiting. The audience comes slower. more cautious. But they come. They clap like they mean it. They laugh louder than they should. You cry once mid-scene. No one mocks you for it. The order meets again. In the attic under that weird bat mural. Some faces are missing, some are new. But the circle forms, potatoes are passed. Some are cracked, some sprouting tiny shoots. No one cares. You raise yours. You say, we are still here. And you are. You all are. Later that week, you spot a child in the front row holding up a tiny cloth pouch stitched with the letters OTA, Order of the Tuber Actors. She doesn't blink the entire performance, just clutches her pouch like it's sacred. After curtain, you find her waiting by the stage door. "Is it real?" she whispers. You nod. "It's as real as you make it," she smiles. "Then I'm carrying it too." You hand her a painted pebble. No explanation. She tucks it in her pouch and runs off. And just like that, the order enters its next age. No longer secret. No longer hidden. Just passed on. Quietly. Lovingly. Like stories. Like legends. Like magic. You can smell it before you even reach the alley. The roasted starch. The whisper of salt. The faint suggestion that something deeply comforting just rolled out of a fire and into a hand that will never forget it. Street potatoes. They're back. Vendors reappear like mushrooms after a thunderstorm, carts wobbling, bellies full of coals, hawking hot foil-wrapped roots with all the flair of Shakespearean nobles. One man offers Juliet's tubers of tragedy. Another cries, Hamlet's hash, to eat or not to eat. You buy one immediately. It scalds your fingertips. You burn your tongue. It's perfect. There's a rumor now, growing louder each week, that the queen herself keeps a roasted potato in her chamber as a symbol of resilience. Unfounded, say her courtiers. Delicious, whisper her maids. The order, well, it doesn't exactly go public, but it begins to glitter at the edges. One actor stitches tiny potatoes into their cloak lining. Another wears a pin shaped like a golden spud. You spot a child in the crowd gripping a root tied with red thread. She never lets go. People start asking, not about the performances, not about the plays. They ask about the pockets. Is it true? Do you still carry them? What happens if you lose it? You try to explain, but how do you describe it? That quiet weight, that silly seriousness, that secret thrill of being part of something no one else quite understands. So instead, you teach. You hold little workshops after rehearsals, inviting curious onlookers to learn the lore. You call it rootcraft. Crispin insists on providing snacks, which mostly means half-burnt pies and raw carrots he swears are tubers in spirit. You teach them the gestures, how to hold it before a scene, how to press it to the chest before stepping into the light. You teach them the words, still carrying it. They repeat it like a promise. Not everyone understands. Some laugh, some roll their eyes. One noble sneers, potatoes. That's not culture, it's compost. You smile. You say nothing. And the next night you spot him in the third row, silently mouthing along with Hamlet's soliloquy, a brown lump peeking from his cuff. Historians still argue whether this spread of potato ritualism in post-plague theater was a form of emotional healing or an elaborate in-joke taken too far. One paper describes it as performance talismanism. Another dismisses it as actor superstition run feral. But when Edith takes the stage for her long-awaited solo, Lady Macbeth no less, she clutches her root in her gloved palm, breathes deep, and turns that monologue into something molten and tragic and terrifying. The audience goes silent. You feel it, the current, the hum, the magic. And after curtain, Edith simply nods. "I needed it," she says. And so the rituals deepen. The root guardians get more ornate. Some are carved bone now, others shaped like animals, stars, even tiny scrolls. One looks suspiciously like a badger with a monocle. Crispin denies responsibility. No one believes him. You set up a little shelf in the back hallway of the theater, the root shrine. People start leaving things, bits of string, torn ticket stubs, petals, pebbles, a single perfectly folded love note. You don't know who's adding what. You don't ask. One day you find a gold ring balanced on a stone. Another day it's gone. Sometimes it's enough to know someone needed it. The plays flourish. Shakespeare's latest, something messy about a shipwreck, a wizard, and a very angry tree, draws crowds night after night. You don't even have a big role, just a funny little messenger with a trumpet and an unfortunate hat. But you savor every line. Every entrance is a little ceremony now. You kiss your potato. You wink at your root guardian. You let the hush of backstage soak through your bones. And then you go. Out into the lights. Out into the hum. Even when the rain pours and the audience huddles under shared cloaks. Even when Crispin drops his sword mid-duel or a pigeon steals a prop. Even when your lines vanish mid-sentence and all you can do is grin and improvise, you still carry it. There's a strength in it now, not superstition, not silliness, just connection, a kind of theater spirit fuel. The weight of everyone who's ever stood in that space and dared to speak truths dressed in lies. Your costume has been mended so many times it's more patch than original fabric. Your boots are 2 performances from falling apart. Your voice squeaks on Wednesdays and your left knee tells the weather with 87% accuracy. But you walk out there like a monarch, because you know something no one else does. You carry the root, and more. So does everyone else. The musicians wear them in their sleeves. The stage hands tuck them into tool belts. The crowd, they start bringing their own. One night, a woman throws hers onto the stage mid-scene. You blink. She mouths, "For luck." You pick it up, give it a spin, and incorporate it into your monologue. The crowd goes wild. From that point on, tossed potatoes become a thing. Like flowers, but heavier. Crispin builds a shield out of chicken wire and disappointment. Will writes a sonnet titled Ode to the Bruised and Flying Tuber. It gets 3 encores. You're not a star. You're not rich. But you are something rarer. You are a keeper of a tradition no one meant to start, but everyone needs now. And one night, long after final curtain, you find yourself alone on stage. The house is dark. The world is quiet. You reach into your pocket, pull out your oldest, lumpiest, slightly moldy friend. You hold it to your chest. And you whisper, still carrying it. The air's different now, not just in the theater, but across London. You can smell spring on the wind and roasted chestnuts on every corner. Someone's playing a lute badly from a window. It's life again. Messy, noisy, absurd life. And still, the potatoes stay. They're not just pockets full of comfort anymore. They've evolved. You're walking down Fleet Street one morning when you spot a boy selling them like charms. He's got a crate of painted ones, stars, moons, miniature crowns. For inspiration, he says, holding one out to a barred-looking fellow with suspiciously clean hands. The man buys 3. Backstage, it's become its own ecosystem. There are rot checks every Monday. Will has started naming his potatoes again. One's called Tragedy, another comedic timing, and the third just Susan. Susan's an odd shade of green. No one touches Susan. And the traditions? They've grown. Theatrical. Every performance now starts with a circle, actors gathering hands, each pulling their tuba from their costume, holding them up like relics. It's oddly solemn. Crispin insists on chanting, "O root of old, our line be bold," even though no one asked for rhyming. You play along. You always play along. Because something about it works. You can see it in the way actors carry themselves on stage now, not just pretending, but inhabiting. There's a presence, a certainty. Like the potato is some ancient anchor dragging performance down into something deeper. Or maybe it's just carbs. Honestly, who's to say? Historians still argue whether the growing integration of potato rituals in post-plague performance art represented an early form of psychological conditioning or merely a mass placebo effect born out of desperation. Some even theorize that Queen Elizabeth's court deliberately encouraged it as performative morale architecture. Whatever the theory, the result is this. You're no longer performing at people. You're performing with them. The audience has their own rituals now. They bring potatoes too. Some hide them in sleeves or tuck them into corsets. Some carry small cloth bags tied with little emblems, smiling masks, crossed swords, the occasional embroidered turnip. Look, not everyone's a botanist. One man claims he saw a potato that glowed faintly during the final act of King Lear. Holy, he said, blessed by the bard himself. No one believed him, except the entire South Bank, apparently, because a week later there's a shrine. Yes, a literal shrine. Stone steps, fresh flowers, and one sad pigeon standing guard over a potato in a velvet-lined box. Every day people line up to leave offerings, coins, scribbled quotes, a lock of hair once. Security intervened. You visit once out of curiosity. Leave a small note tucked inside a folded origami hat. Still carrying it. Are you? 2 days later, it's gone. Replaced by a pebble carved with the word always. That's the thing, really. It's spreading. Other theaters get involved. The Rose introduces Spud Nights. Bring a potato. Get half-price admission. The Curtain holds Mash Madness, where the best decorated route gets a seat upgrade and a dramatic reading by their lead actor. Even touring troupes pick it up. One writes an entire tragedy around a potato. It's called The Route Forsaken. It ends with an audience member being crowned the keeper of the final tuber. They weep. And the Globe, it's thriving. You've never seen it so full. Every show is packed. Even the matinees where half the actors are running on 3 hours sleep and tea mixed with crushed mint lozenges. Doesn't matter. The energy holds. You begin to hear whispers. Not from the actors, from the people watching. It's like the stage knows me. They don't act, they channel. And your favorite? Did that one just wink at me and my potato? You didn't. But you will now. Every time. Still, you know it can't last forever. No tradition does. You start to notice changes. The younger actors don't always carry the route. Some say it's silly, too old-fashioned. A few want to replace it with themed coins or enchanted ribbons. One even suggests a bread roll. Crispin nearly combusts, but you don't panic, because that's how traditions grow, or crumble, or sprout into something else. So you adapt. You gather the new ones. Not all of them care about the potato. Some are here for the craft, some for the fame, some because they have nowhere else to be. That last group, those are the ones who usually stay. You show them the guardian rituals, the circle, the chant, the shrine. Some scoff, some smile, some whisper to their pocket when they think no one's looking. You know you've reached them when halfway through. As you like it, a young actor misses their cue, but instead of freezing, they calmly pull a small, bright purple root from their sleeve, kiss it, and continue like nothing happened. Later, they admit it's a beat. They're colorblind. Doesn't matter. Still carrying it. The city keeps changing. New buildings, new faces, new problems. But the theaters hold their strange gravity. And you? You start writing things down. Not scripts, not stories. Instructions. How to carry the route. How to pass it on. What to do if it sprouts? Where to store them during summer? What it really means to belong here, not just on the stage, but in this wild, unspoken lineage of torchbearers and joke makers and trembling hands waiting behind curtains. And you leave it in the prop closet, behind the broken sword, wrapped in a page from the first program you ever performed in. You don't sign it. You don't need to. Because someday someone will find it. They'll be scared, new, tired, wondering if they belong. And they'll read your words. They'll reach into their pocket and they'll remember, still carrying it. The seasons slip past you now like shifting scenes. Summer folds into autumn with a rustle of leaves and too warm costumes. Winter arrives in fog and creaking joints. Another spring rolls in with flowers and that uncanny smell of damp wood backstage. Through it all, you're still here, still performing, still carrying it. Except, lately, you've been thinking about letting go. Not of the root, not entirely, but maybe of the spotlight. You feel it in your bones, the way your knees groan louder than the audience, how your voice needs more warming up than a meat pie in January. The roles are getting younger, the actors faster, louder, glossier. And you're becoming part of the walls, not in a sad way, more like furniture with a good story. You find yourself leaning more toward the wings these days, watching others take the stage. There's this girl, Emmy, barely 16, eyes too wide, voice too high, but she's got it. That same invisible thrum in her words, that thing that makes people lean forward in their seats and forget they exist. You catch her backstage once, hyperventilating over a single monologue. You don't say much. You just hand her your potato. She stares. "You'll give it back," you say. She nods. She does. The next night, she tucks one of her own into her sleeve. Tiny, lumpy, probably from a neighbor's garden. She doesn't say anything about it, but she doesn't need to. You can see the shift, the calm, still carrying it. Word spreads you're the root coach now. The one young actors come to when they drop lines or doubt themselves or have weird dreams about falling off the stage and turning into a turnip. That was Ben. He's fine now, sort of. You don't give them answers, just your ear. Maybe a baked tuber if they've really had a bad night. Crispin's still around, of course. He runs props now, trains new crew members in the ancient art of improvised set repair. He keeps a sacred root on a cushion by the hammer rack, swears it helps with splinters. And Will? Still writing, still brilliant, still late with rewrites. He insists on referencing potatoes in every script now. Once, he slips a whole monologue about Earth's noble root into a romantic tragedy. It gets the biggest laugh of the night. No one notices when it's removed for the official printing, but we remember. Historians still argue whether Shakespeare's recurring potato metaphors were intentional nods to backstage folklore or simply a running joke born from too many wine-soaked evenings with exhausted actors. Either way, the line, "Wouldst thou unpeel my sorrow?" becomes a local proverb. You find it carved into a bench, scribbled on a wall, painted onto the back of a traveling actor's wagon. You start collecting these little echoes, like pebbles in a pouch. One night, you're leaving the theater late. Moon high, streets quiet, air full of chimney smoke. And you see a girl sitting outside the gates, barefoot, clutching something in her lap. You sit beside her. She offers the root without looking. "It's my first one," she says. You nod. "You'll carry more," you reply. She nods back. You don't need names. That moment is enough. The truth is, you've been everywhere in this story. The nervous newcomer, the bold performer, the one who carries the rituals, the one who teaches, the one who watches. Now you're becoming the one who stays behind. And it's okay, because the story goes on. New actors, new roots, New mistakes and standing ovations and thunderous rainstorms that drown out entire scenes. One show gets delayed when a horse escapes into the audience, another when someone brings a dog that keeps howling during soliloquies. Both nights are unforgettable, and every time, without fail, someone reaches into their pocket, still carrying it. You start to write again, just for yourself. Tiny notes, reflections, short monologues whispered into the quiet of backstage when no one's listening. One goes, "If theater is a fire, then let me be the ember that lights the next match. Not the flame, not the fuel, just the spark." You like that one. Might carve it into the prop table or the inside of your cloak. There's comfort now in knowing you've become part of something that will outlive you, not just the roles or the applause or even the weird tradition of hugging tubers before stage time, but the why behind it all, the anchor, the reminder that even when the lights are harsh, the world is cruel and you forget your next line. Something small and honest sits quietly in your palm saying, "I'm still here. I still matter." You're still carrying it. And when a young actor brings you a misshapen root they found growing behind the latrines, dirt-covered, slightly wrinkled, stubbornly alive, and asks if it's good enough to bring on stage, you smile. You tell them it's perfect, because it is. So here you are. Another night at the Globe, or at least what's left of the Globe. Time's done its usual thing, eaten away the corners, swapped stone for scaffold, laced history with fresh paint and grant money. There are electric lights now and printed programs and a gift shop that sells keychains shaped like little potatoes. You'd think that would ruin the magic, but somehow it hasn't. The air still hums. You walk the boards again, not to perform, but to feel. The echo of footsteps past, yours among them. The stage creaks beneath your weight, still familiar, still breathing. Someone in the rafters is testing the pulley system. Someone else is laughing in the green room. It's a different cast, a different play, a different world. But the rhythm, the root, still there. You sneak a glance into the costume room. Rows and rows of garments, carefully arranged, and in the corner a small wooden box marked carryables. You open it. Inside, 15 potatoes, all different sizes, some painted, some plain, one wrapped in gold thread, one with a tiny mustache drawn on it, and a note, in case you forget why you're here. You almost cry. Almost. Instead, you take the mustached one, tuck it gently into your pocket, like old times. Later, in the back row of the theater, you settle in to watch tonight's performance. It's 12th night. The crowd's buzzing. You catch snippets of conversation. A child asks their mother if the actors have to eat potatoes to remember their lines. A teenager jokes that his brought him theater powers. The lights dim. The hush falls. And the first line is delivered with the kind of trembling clarity that only comes from a heart full of nerves and hope, and maybe one finger resting lightly on a pocketed root. You smile. Historians still argue whether the tradition was ever real, whether actors truly believed the potatoes gave them strength, or if it was all part of the elaborate pageantry of Elizabethan life. A symbolic performance within a performance. A prop turned ritual turned folklore. But you know better. You've felt it. In the middle of storms and silence, in the chaos of opening nights, and the heartbreak of final bows. That weight in your pocket, always steady, always there. A ridiculous, miraculous reminder that theater is never just make-believe. It's memory, repetition, ritual, grit, and sometimes starch, still carrying it. The play tonight is electric. Every scene lands, every joke gets a laugh, every sorrow is met with silence. You watch, not as a critic, not as a teacher, but as someone who knows exactly how many hours went into each beat, each breath. At intermission, a girl in the row ahead of you pulls a small cloth pouch from her coat and gently pats it before heading for a drink. You don't say anything. You don't need to. After the curtain call, you stay seated as the audience clears out, just for a while, to breathe it in one last time. And then, quietly, you reach into your pocket, pull out the mustached potato, place it gently on the edge of the stage. Not for show, not for anyone, really. Just because it feels right, still carrying it, and maybe, finally, ready to pass it on. And now, let it all drift. Let the creak of old boards fade into a lullaby. Let the scent of dust and candle wax swirl into your dreams. The clink of tankards, the rustle of cloaks, the nervous breath before a monologue. Let them all soften now, settle deep into the cushions of your imagination. You've walked a long way tonight, through foggy alleys and laughter-soaked galleries, backstage chaos and silent rituals. You've carried the absurd and the sacred, the heavy and the hilariously small. And now here, with the echoes fading and the story complete, you don't need to carry anything at all. You can let go. Or hold on, if you like. There's room for both. The stage will be here tomorrow and the next night, and the one after that. Maybe a little different. Maybe entirely new. But always waiting. Always whispering. And if someday you find a pocket feeling a little empty, maybe you'll tuck something inside. Just a pebble, a note, or a very small, very noble potato. You'll know what to do. So breathe deep now. Let your thoughts loosen like laces at the end of a long day. Let the velvet curtain fall, soft as a hush. You're safe. You're warm. And the story, your story, was more than enough. Good night, keeper of the root. Sweet dreams.